Well, we are so glad you guys are here with us this morning. Like I said earlier, my name is Dan, and I'm really excited that you guys are here this morning as we close out our series, Holiday Hustle. And before we jump into our talk, into the message today, I want to highlight just a couple of things, remind you what they said. This is our last Sunday morning service of 2015. Is anyone ready for 2016? I know I've talked to a few people, and they're like, Jesus, please let 2016 come quickly. For some of you, 2015 has been a rough year and you're excited for the next year. Maybe for you, this has been an awesome year and you're ready for an even better one in 2016. But this will be our final service of the year, and this allows you to spend time with family. It also allows the church staff to do the same thing and to get some time with family and get away. So next Sunday, we won't be here. However, we will be having this Thursday a Christmas Eve candlelight service. You heard them reference that in the announcement video before Brooke was choking on her spit. That was disgusting, but thank you for the information, Brooke. But you heard her reference that, and I just want to encourage you guys, come early. There'll be a hot chocolate bar set up. It'll be a lot of fun. It'll be a great thing to add to your traditions. I don't know if you guys have like family traditions where you go to this family member's house and then you go to this family member's house and you do whatever that is that are your traditions. This would be a great tradition to add to all of those. It'll be shorter than an hour, so you'll be able to get in and still make it to family and do whatever those traditions are. And for me, honestly, growing up, this was one of the traditions that my family had. We would go to a Christmas Eve candlelight service. I remember I was talking to my sister and I actually realized they even had like a midnight candlelight service, which why you would have that and keep your children up that late on Christmas Eve just sounds like a bad idea. But I remember that. I remember growing up and with my cousins and aunts and uncles, we'd all go to my mom's side of the family in Shelbyville, Illinois, and we'd open presents and there was craziness going on. My grandma had not a real big house and there was just tons of cousins and kids running around just going crazy. And this is one of the traditions that we had, and this memory that I have of growing up, and we would open the presents and we'd eat this awesome dinner and we'd laugh and we'd play games, and usually the kids would like play with some of the toys that they got, and then we'd all like bundle up, because up north you can't wear shorts in December. It's a weird thing, I know. It's kind of crazy to imagine it. And we'd go outside and we'd walk through the snow around the block, and it was a couple blocks down to my grandma's church. And we would go and we'd get the little candles that have the little paper thing around it. I don't know if you've ever been to a candlelight service before, but I always looked forward to that service, even as a kid. Now you might think, man, why would you look forward to a Christmas Eve service at kind of a more traditional church, at your grandma's church? It was awesome, and for probably all the wrong reasons. I remember every year, it was like a circus. I didn't know what was going to happen. There was one year that we went, and again, it's like the midnight service, so one of my cousins was holding his candle and fell asleep, usually a bad thing, and dropped his candle, and like it was all hardwood floors and it was sloped, so the candle just kind of rolled down all the aisles, and we were like, we just kind of watched it roll down and thought the church was going to burn down. It didn't. Or there was one year where the kids choir was up there singing, and this one kid kind of turned green and had to puke while he was on stage. Went right for one of the poinsettias. Like that was his trash can, was the poinsettia on the front of the stage. That was pretty amazing. One actually happened to me. Again, it's midnight, you're tired, and I was sitting there, and I've got my candle and I've got my bulletin, and I'm like falling asleep as we're praying, and then all of a sudden, you know how even though your eyes are closed, sometimes like lights, you can see them a little bit, and I was like, why are the lights getting, and I looked down and my bulletin was on fire. Like I had lit my own bulletin on fire, so I frantically put that out. And I promise you, you may not believe these next couple. I promise you, I wouldn't lie in church. There was one, they had this little balcony that kind of overhung a little bit, and it was probably not, I don't know, up to code, but you could like rest your arms on the edge. Someone dropped their candle from the balcony onto a lady, an old lady, and lit her hair on fire. Like, I kid you not. It was the most amazing, like every year we were like, oh man, this is gonna be awesome. And one of my favorite, even better than lighting the old lady's blue hair on fire, even better than that, there was this one Christmas Eve, and we go, And sometimes they had like children's choirs and adult choirs, and this time they happen to have an adult choir. So the choir comes out all in their like matching choir robe things, because that's a thing, I guess. And so they're up there and they're singing, and there's this one old guy, he's awesome, that kind of catches my attention. He's singing real loud and smiling right in the middle. He's kind of moving his arms around. And at one point, he's moving his arms, and he kind of looks down and looks at his arm, and then like reaches over and like reaches for his other arm, which is an empty arm sleeve. And he starts kind of like grabbing the arm sleeve and looking around, and he's singing, and then he starts like, oh, like patting at where his arm should be. And he lost his arm, and he's like grabbing at the sleeve, starting to make more and more of a scene. And like everyone's, singing and looking over at this guy in the choir who just gets louder, and and he's like smacking his shoulder, grabbing his arm sleeve, starting to freak out. It gets so loud that like the whole choir's like, do we stop singing? Like, do you call the ambulance? Like, what do you do? And he's, and then the guy next to him finally like grabs him and helps like puts his arm and puts it through the armhole. Apparently this guy was getting older and maybe had some initial signs of dementia and thought he'd lost his arm because he didn't put his arm through the arm sleeve. And the guy like has to put his arm, insert it through the sleeve. I kid you not, the whole rest of the song he's like singing, and just every so often he reaches over and he's like, yeah, it's still there. He's just singing his song. And man, to him, Jesus did a miracle that night. I mean, it was like arm grew back. He's like, thank you, Jesus, I have an arm. And it was amazing. And every Christmas Eve, imagine as a kid, if you see a lady's hair get caught on fire, dude loses an arm, kids puking in poinsettias, like this is a win. Like this service, you are not gonna wanna miss that. Now I'll say this, our Christmas Eve service will be great. Hopefully no one loses arms or hair catches on fire. I don't think anyone's gonna like miss their arm unless Ethan on the drums wants to go like Def Leppard on us. I don't know where you're at and just do the one arm drummer thing, but we will have all of our arms and no hair catching on fire. But for me, as a child on Christmas Eve, that's what I look forward to. And it's funny because here's this service that's supposed to be all about the birth of Jesus and celebrating that and being with family and worshiping God. And all I could think about is a kid gonna puke in the poinsettia again? Like, is the old dude gonna lose his arm? What's gonna catch on fire? Maybe the church is gonna burn down. To me, as a child, that's where my head went. And I was thinking about this as I was getting ready, and I thought, man, honestly, that's sometimes an analogy for what Christmas is like in our lives. That the things that are most important kind of get lost with all the craziness that goes on. Maybe for you, it's craziness with family. Visiting family is just a little crazy for you. Or maybe you, like my wife and I, have not finished your Christmas shopping yet, and you're starting to feel a little crazy because like the Amazon deadline's creeping up with you, and you're not sure is it going to arrive. And there's that kind of crazy. Or maybe you're looking at the budget and you're going, oh, this feels crazy. And whatever it is, there's work parties, there's all this busyness, there's all the trappings of Christmas that come and the hustle that comes. And sometimes on a day that's all about the creator of heaven and earth becoming creation for us, like that's what it's about. And yet our mind is on everything but that. I mean, if you look at the whole of human history, the arc of the biblical narrative, everything kind of comes to a crescendo at Christmas. I mean, this is God becoming man. I mean, imagine how wild this is, and yet our attention is on everything else. You see, in an unexpected act of redemption and reconciliation, God gives humanity the gift of hope. I mean, that's what Christmas is really about, is us getting this gift of hope. But for us, sometimes, and this is why we named it Holiday Hustle, in the midst of the hustle and the hassle, we lose sight of it. I mean, capitalism goes into full swing. We see the commercials. We see the advertisements. Our kids, any of you, maybe when you were a kid, you actually had like paper magazines. I know our children don't have those anymore, but you'd like circle the stuff in the magazine for your parents, and you put like earmark it or put little piece of it, and you circled like 1,000 things. Like I remember that, like you're just like, I want that and I want that. And So I don't know where you're at in this place. If you're an adult, if you have kids, I get it. It's easy that you want to provide an awesome Christmas. And young people, I understand. This is an exciting time for them. I understand the difficulty, the pull of that. For all of you college students, you just finished finals and you're just like done. You're thinking break. That's what I'm most excited about. And I haven't experienced this one, but talking to my parents said as a grandparent, it's even harder not to lean into that and want to just make an awesome Christmas for your family and your grandkids. And I don't know where you find yourself this week, but if you've lost yourself a little bit in the holiday hustle, I want to let you know you're in good company because this is normal. I understand it. I mean, could we dial things back a little bit? Sure. I mean, could we make some decisions to not do certain things, not go certain places and that sort of, sure, but at the same time, you can't stop the machine from coming. I mean, this machine that is kind of the Christmas conglomerate coming at us in this big, massive, all the parties and all the things, you can't stop that. So the question that I want to ask you is, how can we get back to the cause of all this celebration? I mean, how can we, in the midst of it all, I mean, we can't completely remove ourselves from it, but in the midst of it all, how can we get our attention on the right things? I mean, how do you see the hope of humanity in the midst of the hustle? I mean, this is what we want to do. In the midst of it, you see, we can't completely remove ourselves from it. We're in the middle of it. But while you're in the middle of it, how do you see the hope? How do you see the cause of all the celebration? To use the cliche, how do you see the reason for the season? Well, I've got some good news, and that's to learn to be a sheep keeper, not an innkeeper. That's my cheesy pastor joke of the day. But to be a sheep keeper and not an innkeeper. And this really kind of goes back to the Christmas story that many of us heard, that like Talitha referenced, that she heard her grandpa read every single year. And what I'd like to do is I want to look back at that story and look at it maybe through a different lens and realize what was going on for those people in that day. You see, around the time that Jesus was born, Caesar Augustus declared that there would be this great census, that we wanted to count all these people. And so Mary and Joseph, they had to travel. Mary's pregnant and they're traveling a long way. And the empire says they have to come and do the census. And just as a complete side note, like as I was like writing my notes down and talking about the Roman Empire and the oppressive empire and that sort of thing, like all my brain thought was like Star Wars. And just like the empire, and I pictured like a dark cloak, and like the emperor is a different empire. But anyway, total side note. But anyway, so they're traveling this great distance. They're traveling back to their homeland. I mean, imagine the hassle with this. I mean, traveling now is frustrating and difficult. When I travel long distances with my children, I tend to get a little frustrated because they're sitting in our minivan, which has ample room, watching a movie on the TV that's inside of the van, probably on Kelly and I's iPhones, like playing a game. And then they say, I'm bored. Any other parents, am I the only one that wants to that gets frustrated with my children? But they say like they're bored, and I've officially become my parents, because my response, when I was a child, we didn't have TVs and vans. I played with a paperclip for 4 hours because that's all I had, and they've like got all this stuff around them. And I get tempted when we stop at a rest stop to just drive off and leave them. I'm having visions of like, it'd be so peaceful. And I'm kidding, kind of. Like traveling back then, I mean, imagine traveling back then. You didn't have vehicles, you didn't have heat and AC, you sure didn't have any DVD players. I mean, traveling back then was a huge hassle. It's a miracle. Humanity, didn't cease to exist. Children back then, I'm sure, you just leave them at the Oasis. We're done. But traveling then was even more of a hassle. So here you have Mary and Joseph traveling a long distance. They get to Bethlehem, and the population of Bethlehem just swells. I mean, historical records show that on these census days, these cities like Bethlehem, the population is usually not that great, but at these censuses, it grows. So, everyone's there. It's packed. It's crowded. I'm sure you're frustrated that you're having to do this. You're being forced to do this by an occupying government. And so you're there, and Mary and Joseph are there. And then, of course, what happens? Mary begins to go into labor. Mary and Joseph realize, we got to figure something out. Like, this baby's coming and, we can't go to urgent care or the ER. Like, it's going to go down, like right now. This is it. And here's what happens. I want to read this. It says, "So it was that while they were there, the days were completed for her to be delivered. And she brought forth her firstborn son and wrapped him in swaddling clothes and laid him in a manger because there was no room for them in the inn." I want to give a little context to this. So they go around and they go to the innkeeper and they say, "Hey, listen, she's about to have a baby. Is there any room? We kind of need a room, one, to stay in, two, a baby, and they go and the innkeeper says, "Listen, there's no room. There's so many people here right now. There's no room. We've got a manger. We've got this place where we keep the animals." And sometimes our little nativity sets like kind of skew our perspective because it's like real pretty and nice and it looks like all perfect and there's like the little angel that you hang at the top and all this stuff. But mangers back then were not these clean, nice places. Many times they were actually kind of dug out caves on the backside of homes where the animals would be, so it smelled. It was probably dark and dingy. It was dirty, filthy. That's the manger they go into. Now, I want you to stop for a moment and imagine being this innkeeper. Now, here's the thing. We've got to give him a little bit of grace because he doesn't realize who Mary is. He sure doesn't realize who this baby is. So he doesn't have any of that perspective. But he's lost in the hustle and the hassle. And he sees a woman in need and he just thinks, "Listen, I can't be everyone's answer. I'm sorry, there's no room, there's nothing we can do." Now imagine for a second if that innkeeper would have had a little perspective and would have said, "You know what, sure, it's inconvenient. Yeah, we're gonna have to juggle things around. I might have to move some people. I might make some people mad, might hurt my business a little bit, but we're gonna make room for you." Imagine how the biblical narrative could have been different. Imagine the blessing that the innkeeper could have received if he would have pulled back a little bit. I mean, the innkeeper could have been the host of heaven's son. Instead, all he saw was hustle and hassle. He saw the hustle, he saw the hassle, and he said, "You know what? I don't have time for this." And he'd lost that perspective. He could have been the host of heaven's son. He could have been the hero of the story. It could have, been the story of this innkeeper served and he sacrificed and he loved and he gave a home that night to heaven's son. But instead, the story doesn't go that way. But he's not the only character in this story. He's not the only person that has an opportunity to become about this story. You see, the Bible tells us in the very next verse, it sets up what happens next. And here's what it says in the book of Luke. It says, "Now there were in the same country shepherds living out in the fields, keeping watch over their flock by night." So there's these shepherds not too far away in the same country, in the same general area, keeping their flocks at night. Now, again, I want you to kind of put yourself in their shoes. It's night. If you're a shepherd at this time, and there's multiple shepherds, so there's probably actually multiple flocks. There's a lot of real interesting kind of cultural things. These flocks could intermingle and mix in together, and it's like, I own 20 sheep, somebody else does, and they're all roaming together. There's an interesting thing that the sheep know their shepherd's voice. And as one shepherd would call out to their sheep, the sheep of that shepherd would come. Some interesting references in the Bible for that. So there's probably multiple flocks together, multiple shepherds together, and they're kind of working together, spending time together. And at night, there's a bit of a process. You can't just go to sleep and let your sheep roam freely. You have to create a pen of some kind. So sometimes that would be kind of a cave that they would get the sheep into, and they would actually lay down in the entrance so the sheep couldn't go out, or they'd set up kind of a makeshift pen for all of the sheep. So they've probably got the sheep in there, bedded them down, made a campfire, and they're laying down there for the night. And I want us to realize that it's at this time that the sky explodes with activity. I mean, angels show up. The Bible tells us that a host of angels show up and they declare what's happened, that the Son of God has been born in Bethlehem. And I get it. Just like the innkeeper, he had no way of knowing. These shepherds get a little extra reinforcement. I mean, I kind of doubt it that the shepherds are sitting there and the sky explodes and they're like, could you dial it back a little bit? Like the glory's a little bright. Could you turn it down a couple octaves? Like, this is really loud. I'm trying to get some shut eye. I mean, I get it that the shepherds had more of an opportunity to hear and to see what was going on, but they still had a decision to make. And the angels come and they say what's happened, and the shepherds could be like, oh, that's pretty awesome. Like, that's cool. Maybe we'll check it out tomorrow. We'll wake up in the morning, baby's not going anywhere. We'll see him in the morning. But the shepherds have a decision to make. They have to decide, are they going to be hassled by this inconvenience? Because again, imagine what they have to do. They have to get up. They have to put the fires out. They have to wake the sheep up and get them all together and break the pen down. And then they have to travel. They have to travel by night with a bunch of sheep. So again, imagine this process. Imagine what it would have been like to travel with these sheep. They have to get them to the manger, and they get over there. And here's the decision that they make. I'm going to read what the shepherds say. So it was, when the angels had gone away from them into heaven, that the shepherds said to one another, let us now go to Bethlehem and see this thing that has come to pass, which the Lord has made known to us. So listen, it's not going to be later. It's going to be now. Let's do it right now. Yeah, it's going to be a hassle. It's going to be a problem. It's going to be difficult to travel by night. It might even be a little dangerous for some of the animals, but you know what? Let's go now. See, when they saw hustle, when they saw hassle, they made a decision to still look for the cause of all this celebration, to still look for the reason behind these angels showing up, God speaking, this cacophony of music and sound and angels' voices, and the angels have now left. And they decide, no, you know what? We're going to be a part of this. And imagine, again, them traveling back, and they arrive in Bethlehem. And again, think about all the logistics for this. They likely can't bring all their sheep into this small manger. So they probably have to rotate. There's probably, hey, listen, I'll take care of the sheep right now. You guys go see the baby. You guys go see the Lord. You see the Savior. I'll take care of things here, and then we'll rotate around. And they still had to take care of the sheep. They still had all the logistics and all the problems. They couldn't remove themselves from the hustle. But they could change their perspective. They could choose to see the cause for the celebration. And they served. And it's because of that that lowly, seemingly insignificant shepherds got to be a part of the biggest moment in the history of creation. These shepherds that are low on the totem pole of society, these seemingly insignificant roles. I mean, why would they get to play a part when it seems like what should be a central character, this innkeeper, has this opportunity and he sees hassle? Yet these shepherds see an opportunity. See, I want to close out with a story that you might not expect at Christmas time. It's not exactly a Christmas story. It's not found in the Gospels. There's a story in the Bible in Israel's ancient history where one of the patriarchs of Israel, one of the kind of figures that are real central to their story, is traveling a great distance. He's traveling about 500 miles by foot. And while he's traveling, he goes out and he arrives at this place and he decides, you know what, I'm going to bed down for the night. I'm tired. It's still a long ways to go. I'm going to go ahead and bed down. And at this time, there's not exactly a Holiday Inn to stop at. So he grabs the nearest rock as a pillow and he lays down and he goes to sleep. The Bible tells us that while he's sleeping, that he has this dream. And in this dream, he sees this stairway, and it's a stairway that goes from earth all the way to heaven. And this whole time, these angels are going up the stairway and down the stairway and up the stairway and down the stairway. And his eyes are open to all of this. And in this dream, he sees God beside the stairway. And God speaks to him so clearly and confirms these dreams that he has for him. These things that he's called Jacob to. He tells him, hey, listen, I'm going to do these things for you. I've promised this and I haven't forgotten you. And Jacob, he wakes up. He looks around and it's just as he went to sleep. But he has this realization. And he says this, and this is so profound. I want us to get this. He says, the Lord is surely in this place, and I didn't even know it. How holy this place is. This must be the house of God. This is the gate of heaven. See, in the midst of travel, in the midst of frustration, he falls asleep. And when he's asleep, his eyes are opened. And he sees that God has been all around this whole time. Like when he bed down to go to sleep, like this was happening. And his eyes are open. He's awakened to the wonder that is God all around him. In the Christmas season, so many times we're like Jacob. We're blind to everything that God's been doing around us. And we think about that holiday party we got to get to, and we got to think about the Christmas cards that we send out, and now they're going to be getting out too late, and we still got to go shopping, and we've still got this, and our eyes are blinded. And it's not that God wants to start doing something. It's that he already is. Like he's all around us right now. And he's working, and Jacob saw that stairway, and his eyes were opened, and he said, how holy this place is. You see, Jacob fell asleep blind to it, but he woke up to a greater reality. And I want to challenge us that this Christmas season, we've got a few days before Christmas, that we would wake up to a greater reality. That we would wake up to what God is doing. We would wake up and realize, like Jacob, wow, like God's been working this whole time. He's all around. When I was a kid and I was going to that candlelight service, man, it was just a show for me. It was something to laugh at. It was something fun to do. But in that moment, like God was moving. And for us, in the crazy hustle and hassle that can be Christmas, God's moving. He's all around us. And we have an opportunity to wake up to that greater reality. So here's my challenge. Here's what I want you to do this week. I want you to do something out of the ordinary, something you hadn't planned on doing between now and Christmas Day. Maybe you step away and you just go on a walk. And you decide, I'm just going to get some space, and I want to take some time just to talk to God, to thank him for this season, to thank him that he is the cause of all of this celebration. Or maybe to just think about all the blessings that I have in life. My friends, my family, my health. It's easy to know the pressures, but take some time to celebrate. Or maybe you'll do like what Talitha talked about, and before you open presents, you gather together and you say, hey, let's read the Christmas story. We're going to do something a little bit different this year. Again, I don't know where you are. I don't know the best thing for you. I don't know what you need to do, but what I can challenge you is do something. Do something that will help open your eyes to a greater reality, the cause of all of this. I'm not asking you to not do presents. I'm not asking you to not have eggnog or set out cookies or whatever those traditions are for you. What I'm asking is that you do something extra. You do something more, to pause, to pull back, and to focus on the cause of all of this. So wherever you're at, whatever that means for you, whatever that looks like, maybe it's by serving. Maybe today all you could think about was, I want to get home, I want to take a nap, I want to watch football. You realize there's an opportunity at 2:00 to go and to help provide Christmas gifts for low-income families, people that couldn't provide Christmas anywhere, and you decide, you know what, we're going to serve at Affordable Christmas. That's what we're going to do, because we're going to realize that God's working all around, and we're going to come alongside him. And we're going to serve. I would just challenge you to do something different, because here's what happens. When you do that, when you change your course a little bit, it has this way of opening your eyes to a greater reality. When you stop and you pull back from the hustle, that's when you can see it all. That's when you have an opportunity to connect with God in a way that you haven't before. So here's what we're going to do as a church. So we're going to end with a song. The band's going to lead us in a song and singing, "Oh, come let us adore him." And I want us just to sing that with worshipful hearts, saying, God, that's what we want to do. We want to adore you, because you are worth all the praise. You're worth everything we could ever do. And we want to thank you for sending your son, Jesus. So we're going to close, and then we'll sing the song together. God, we thank you. We thank you that in the midst of all the hustle and hassle that sometimes can be the holidays, in the midst of travel and Christmas parties and gifts and everything, that there's something much bigger going on all around us. And like Jacob, may our eyes be opened up to that greater reality. May our eyes be open to what you're doing around us. God, and I pray for this church, for every single one of us, God, that we would take time out in these next few days to pull away, to connect with you, to get our eyes on you. And may you remind us of why we celebrate this, of why we do all these things. Not that these things are bad, but God, may we remember the cause of all of this celebration. May we see the hope in the midst of the holiday hustle. And we thank you for all these things, and we pray this in your name. Amen.